Morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming out on this lovely summer day. Hopefully you're all enjoying things you like to do in the summer, whatever that might be. So yesterday I went to a native plant nursery, dope nursery, southwest of Eugene, out in the forest, and quite an amazing place of plants, small plants, flowers, shrubs, many trees. And Cynthia has been doing it for decades. I had the good fortune to visit her and get some various plants for my garden. And red flowering currant among one. Hummingbirds love those. So I bring these home and I open the hatch to my car and I unload a couple and put them in the yard. And I go back and look in and there's this little tiny bird sitting in there. Like tiny. And it's not moving, it's not freaking out, it's just sitting there. I go, okay. And I wonder, well, was the bird in one of the plants sleeping in one of the containers? Because it looked a little bewildered. Instead of reacting and trying to fly, it was just sitting there. I go, oh, okay. So I pick it up and put it in my hand, it just sits there. So then I walk across the yard, sit down at the picnic table, and I'm holding it. It's just sitting there looking at me. And so I'm watching the quality of my mind. I go, how am I going to feed this? I mean, what is this bird doing? It's like, how am I going to feed it? Where's it going to live? It won't move. It's just sitting in my hand. And I go, okay. So it just stayed there for the longest time. And then I held my hand up and it flew off. So anyway, we all have these experiences with nature in one way or another, whatever that might be, an insect, a leaf, plant. So that was one. I love birds, so that was exciting. Now, something related to that, this morning, I go out to those plants, and a deer had shredded the foliage on three of them. It was all gone. So then I was observing the quality of my mind then. It wasn't a good Buddhist. But I thought, okay, these things happen and we'll nurture it back. So there's kind of two things going with nature and like, where's my mind going with this? So, okay. So really, with that little intro into the wild, today's talk and possibly next week's two talks on the turning of the Dharma wheel, which you're all familiar with. It's central to Buddhism. So we'll talk about Dharma wheels and sacred circles and mandalas, which really are very much a part of the human species. So the Dharma wheel and the first turning of the Dharma wheel was in Sarnath. So that's very close to Varanasi, about 6 miles away. And Varanasi is the sacred center of what we call Hinduism, or what I refer to as Vedic culture. And Buddha was very much involved with them as far as studying with them, interacting with them, debating with them. So very interesting, just a short distance out is where he gave the first teaching after what we call his enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, which was 75 miles away from there. So he must have walked it. So here in Sarnath, first turning of the wheel, legend has it that there were 5 mendicants with him that maybe had studied and practiced with him. And he decided to give the first teaching of something that in some ways can't be transferred in language. But of course, it needs to be because that's how we function. or one of the ways, but a key way. So the first turning of the wheel were the Four Noble Truths. There is suffering, there is the cause of suffering, there is the cessation of suffering, and there is the path to cessation. Okay? And suffering is not just one definition, it's complex. And that's what Buddhism addresses, because the intention is to practice medicine to heal humans. That's Buddhist teaching. And so the initial one was, the first turning of the wheel was pretty clear, in some ways simple. And then the Four Noble Truths, and there's the Eightfold Path. Now out here on this stone column, as you enter through those gates, there is a Dharma wheel with 8 spokes. And that's what that represents. So one might ask, why the symbolism of a wheel? Why wasn't it a square, a rectangle, triangle? And as we all know, circles and cycles are very much a part of human life and nature. And the cosmology is things move in cycles, the moon, right? And nature, particularly here, we have 4 seasons, so it's a cycle. So humans are very connected with cycles. That's one aspect, but also the wheel was very much then a part of Indian Vedic symbolism. That culture still has a wheel on flags and such. The Jains and Vedic culture. So thus we have a wheel from that culture. Also, they had wheels on their chariots, whereas in this continent, there were no mechanical wheels. They didn't exist for the indigenous peoples. But spiritual wheels did exist here. So the chariot wheel has a certain, and the Dharma wheel has a certain symbolism, that is the wheel itself is a circle, and that conveys a sense of wholeness of the Dharma and the teachings. Then the rim is another aspect. The hub in the center, another, and then the spokes. Thus we have the Dharma wheel. Frequently it's depicted with 8 spokes, and that's the Eightfold Path that I just mentioned. Right view, right intention, right? Within the realm of wisdom. Right speech, right action, and right livelihood. That is in the realm of ethics. And then into the realm of zazen, right effort, right awareness, right concentration. That is in the realm of samadhi, right? So if we really deeply practice these Eightfold Path, that's his teaching, that will be a key element to relieving one's suffering, for the basic teaching. However, one has to spend their lifetime mining this treasure of spiritual teachings. So the Eightfold Path, the 8 spokes. So in the center, in that hub, there's frequently these, right in the center, you've seen them, there's these 3 kind of curvaceous forms, like a yin yang, except there's 3, right? Curved, so a certain element conveys dynamic movement. And those are the 3 jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. That's what that represents. which is, those are key. That's key to the energy of the wheel. So what's interesting to me about this wheel is we have a mechanical wheel, like Joichi knows. He's been working on the bikes here, and they're very elegant. You lube one up and get it all tuned up, and you spin it. It's quite beautiful. And many you have bikes or wheelbarrows. We work here a lot. We have a collection of wheelbarrows, and the indigenous people didn't have wheels, so they didn't use wheelbarrows. They had to carry things a different way. We have this wonderful, elegant tool that can carry loads. So, we have cars. Interesting there, but they work. So these are wheels. These are mechanical wheels that have their function, but there's another aspect to wheels that we're exploring. So occasionally, mostly the wheel is depicted with the 8 spokes. Sometimes there's 10, depending where you're at, what culture, what sect, and sometimes 10 is somewhat common too. And that's what, in our chants here, we have the 10 directions, right? The cardinal points, up and down, and between the cardinal points. But really what that symbolizes is just infinity. It just goes on and on, it's endless. So it's this interpenetrating energy of form and non-form, the 10 spokes. So on Tuesday and Thursday, we chant this. That's what you do. Faith in mind, right? So in faith in mind, where's my note here? So abiding nowhere, yet everywhere. The 10 directions are right before you. So that's quite interesting. You're abiding everywhere, nowhere and everywhere. The 10 directions are right before you. That's the 10 spokes also. That's just infinite space, and we are all connected to that. That's one of the aspects of what Zen Buddhists refer to as no birth, no death. So another aspect of this sacred circle is mandalas, and many of you are familiar with mandalas. We have this wonderful Tibetan tanka here. That is a mandala. Mandala is a sacred circle. The Tibetan culture, maybe some of you have experienced there are ceremonies where they do sand paintings. So they'll create, and they often do it in public ceremonies. They did one in Eugene a few years ago down near the river. So they'll use these colored sand minerals and crushed semi-precious stones, what have you, and very intricate. They have these little tools, and the monks and nuns make these circular mandalas. Now, in the past, this was never done in the public. It was done in the monasteries by people that were initiated and not to be shown in public. It's a sacred ceremony. But now, the Tibetans travel around the world to do the ceremony with the intention of it is healing. It's a healing force. So this one I came across a few decades ago in Eugene, the Tibetan artist at Kogen. So this sits above my altar. Now, interesting, very interesting, is the Navajo Indians, indigenous peoples of Arizona. They also do sand painting. And they had no physical, historical contact with the Tibetan culture. So, what's going on there? Right. So that's part of the human psyche, connected, with everyone. So there's things that we do that other people are doing. There's a contact, but obviously there is a connection at a subtle level. So the Navajo have been doing this for centuries, and they use them in rituals of healing too. And the person that's being treated actually sits inside the pain, and it goes on for days. And when that ceremony is over, they destroy it. And the Tibetans also, when the ceremony's done, they finish the mandala, it gets destroyed, which they're embracing impermanence in a very positive way. They're just releasing that energy. So here's, spiritual, sacred wheels. And I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, have encountered them in some way, in your dreams, in drawings when you were a child, one way or another. Even raindrops, when they hit a puddle, it's infinite little circles, right? I'm a big fan of raindrops and puddles. If you see me staring at a puddle, that's what I'm doing. So, many of you are familiar with Carl Jung, amazing psychologist. And he wrote a little book on mandala symbolism. So he studied the human condition extensively. He had lots of patients and traveled around the world. And it's universal that one thing, small children draw mandalas in one way or another. I have a collection of some of them. And the insane draw mandala, he found, often. And what he determined was that this is one way, one aspect that the human condition is seeking wholeness and healing. So this process and experience services all over the place in many ways. And he was really fascinated with that and studied it extensively. They also surface in dreams. He studied dreams quite a bit, and they'll often come in dreams. Here we have a Avalokita, Prajnaparamita over here on the Buddha's left. You see the circle behind. You're familiar with that, whether it's Jesus or Mary or a saint. That represents a halo, right? So it's spiritual energy. It happens to be a circle. It's not a square. You can put a square up there. I like squares. I even wrote a little poem, Homage to a Right Angle. But but they have their limits. Modern society is very fond of right angles. And they're practical. They're really practical. Good. There's a certain beauty in a right angle. So it's interesting to me very much that these mandalas that the Tibetans and the Navajo make, they'll destroy them. They're very precious, I mean, like that. I know. So what's going on there is very Buddhist as far as the practice of anicca, impermanence. And that's something that we all need to penetrate deeply and work with, because things disappear, things break, our friends and family die. So how do we come to terms with this? And in Buddhism, there are teachings that give us the medicine to embrace this. Now, what does Zen do? Where's the mandalas and circles in Zen? In a sense, this whole altar is not circular, but it's composed as a mandala. And so is this space, so you're actually sitting inside of a mandala. And then there's the wonderful enso. I was going to bring that big cloth one we have, the one was part of the mountain seat ceremony, the gifts. There's enso, there's Zen, and now it's quite interesting because it's a circle done with a brush and ink, right? One movement, this one. And it's not perfect like a chariot wheel, or this is very crisp. But this enso stops short at the end, kind of has this little brushwork. So it's basically, the wholeness of the universe, which isn't perfect. Being imperfect is perfect. So that's the Zen response with the enso. One movement. They're not dominating. I gotta fix this. That's not right. I gotta connect that. Nothing. Which is okay. That's another way. But the enso is dynamic. So relative to impermanence and these mandalas and releasing them into the energy of the universe, at the end of our meals here, we do this little chant. Abiding in this ephemeral world like a lotus in muddy water, the mind is pure and goes beyond, and thus we bow to Buddha. So, abiding in this ephemeral world, anicca, impermanence. However, there's a greater living force that's part of the impermanence. So that's what we're working at, penetrating. For liberation, that's the whole point of Buddha turning the wheel. Liberation from delusion. So the 4th of July is coming up, so we'll all celebrate Interdependence Day, right? We know that. Like a lotus in muddy water. Well, the lotus we know is a considerable symbol. We don't have lotuses here. We do have lilies and lily pads. I had the good fortune to wander around in Asia on pilgrimage, and it was early in the morning, and I was near these ancient ruins, Buddhist ruins in Thailand, and you could almost watch it. This plant came up. I stood there for a while, and it was a lotus, and it's hot there, so it opened up. And it's muddy and mucky and murky water, and this lotus comes up. There's different colors. This particular one was white. And so like a lotus in muddy water, the mind is pure and goes beyond. There you have it. So if there are any questions or stories about mandalas or insights or experiences, please come forth with your medicine.
Okay.
Yes.
Could you elaborate on the altar being a mandala?
Sure. Well, as you can see, it's very symmetrical, as is this Tonka painting. It seems to me that the human mind, one aspect of the human mind, human being, creates these things for psychological order, right? And balance. I mean, look at our face. Eyes, nose, tongue, ears, very symmetrical. And then if you look closer, asymmetrical, particularly when you get older. And that's all beautiful. But yeah, a mandala, of course, we have Buddha, in a sense, as the hub, as the very center of this tanka. Various deities around to the left and right, and there are offerings, nurturing that spiritual energy, and the flowers and tea and sweet water and food, little calligraphy to the hungry ghost, feeding the hungry ghosts all the cravings within all of us with spiritual energy. So yeah, it's composed in a mandala. It's three-dimensional, and we're here. We're in the mandala. It's not up there. It's part of it. We're in it. Right?
Diagnosed at one point with schizoaffective disorder,
Uh-huh.
and this is coming around. Anyway, schizophrenia, I'm not positive about this, but I think I learned that in the DSM, the list of all those mental disorders or whatever in the United States, the only one in that list that's like culturally universal is schizophrenia. And to me, that suggests that, like, whether or not the culture can like hold that and integrate that and help that be what it is, that's about people being aware of things that a lot of our culture is not aware of. Anyway, she sees mandalas like everywhere,
Uh-huh.
and just basically like connecting everything. She like at some point kind of understood herself to be the mandala or be the center of it, which makes sense that we each have that. Anyway, that's understood.
Thank you for sharing. That's quite interesting and lovely. We need to create space for people that are unusual, that we think are unusual socially, because they're processing, and just like we all are. And your friend is, So hopefully someone will give her more mandala energy, medicine. Nice. Speak up.
I have been to Chaco Canyon and I've been to the mounds in Illinois, and I read a lot of, and I understand that the first peoples didn't use a wheel.
Mm-hmm.
And it occurs to me that must have been intentional, because anybody could have built those kinds of civilizations and spent thousands of years without destroying the earth, living on it. Maybe thought that the wheel was an act of.
Well, I think it's a fair question as to, what's going on with that. Important question.
I mean, the wheel gives us superhuman powers.
It does.
We can go further than we can.
Mm-hmm.
We carry more than we could without it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just can't imagine people that were so brilliant and so attuned to what was going on couldn't have thought of a wheel.
Yeah.
Right. So your talk put those thoughts together.
Yes.
This is almost to respond to Linda's point or question. I've heard that Mesoamerican cultures, though they didn't use the wheel for machinery or for hauling, there was actually children's toys that had functional wheels in them. There was some knowledge of the wheel.
Oh, wow. Very interesting.
Yeah, but no evidence that they were used for carting.
For hauling and
Yeah, thank you. That's a fascinating aspect of this interesting conundrum. Homo sapiens. What are we up to? Lots of good things.
One other aspect is that excessive use of wheels encourages excessive amounts of flat surface.
Good point. Little change in geography. They did have boats. Right?
I've made many $1 in my life, and I've studied cultures, and I worked with some Native American people. One woman in particular said to always wear a skirt, which I actually do, but not necessarily because the circle is sacred. But I just what I wanted to share is that mandalas are so interesting if you've ever made one. If you have one, usually you start from the center and you build out. And all of the tiny little mistakes that you make end up disappearing in the larger, beautiful picture. I just thought that was.
Yeah, I
I
see.
made a huge one.
Yeah.
So many mistakes and so many symbols that I would repeat, but they were always a little bit different and not perfect. But when you step back and look at it, it's just beautiful. Usually.
Oh, thank you. Very interesting.
Yeah, I see a circle as a line through it, always going through the center. It's basically infinite dichotomies, light on one side, dark on the other, through the center. And so each line can go through the circle. And there are these gradients of light and dark, hot and cold, up and down. And towards the center, I hope that I can find enough centeredness to be of those qualities, light and dark, hot and cold, this and that, to where if I can be closer to the center, I can move in all directions more easily.
Wonderful. Comes to mind the beautiful stained glass windows in the European cathedrals, particularly in France, Chartres cathedrals, massive stained glass windows that are 1,000 years old and close. And there's another culture and another religion that is using that image and medicine in another way.
Kogen, can you speak any more to the healing effects of the mandala?
Well, I'd say pay attention to them and just be open and see what unfolds. And then come talk to me. Okay. Boo.